The first drone crashed spectacularly into Margaret Holloway's prize-winning rose bushes at precisely 6:17 a.m., sending a spray of electronic debris and pink petals across her meticulously maintained front lawn. She hadn't even finished her first cup of coffee. Margaret's hands were shaking, but not from fear, from pure, unbridled rage. This wasn't just any drone. This was the third one this week that had buzzed over her 5-acre farm, hovering with surgical precision around her livestock, her crops, her personal spaces. And she knew exactly who was behind these aerial invasions: Diane Lockhart, the most notorious HOA president in Oak Ridge Estate's 20-year history. The drone's sleek black body lay broken among the rose bushes, its camera lens cracked but still blinking with an eerie, defiant red light. Margaret knew the drill. These weren't random surveillance flights. These were calculated missions designed to catch property owners in any conceivable violation of the Homeowners Association's 247-page rulebook. Her farm sat just outside the traditional suburban grid of Oak Ridge Estates, technically part of the HOA but existing in a peculiar liminal space. Margaret raised heritage breed chickens, grew organic vegetables, and maintained her property with a precision that would make most farmers look slovenly. Yet Diane Lockhart, or HOA Karen, as the neighborhood whispered behind her back, seemed hellbent on finding something, anything, to psych her for. The drone's remnants told a story of escalating tension. Its sophisticated camera could zoom in on a single blade of grass, detecting if it was a millimeter taller than the prescribed lawn height. Its thermal imaging could reveal unauthorized outdoor heating elements. Its GPS tracking could map every single movement on her property. Margaret walked over, her steel-toed boots crushing fragments of the expensive surveillance device. She picked up the camera module, turning over in her callous hands. Someone was going to pay for this invasion, and she knew exactly how she would make that happen. 3 drones, she muttered, a dangerous smile playing at the corner of her mouth. Time to send a message. Her phone buzzed. Another email from the HOA, no doubt. Probably another citation, another petty complaint. But this time, Margaret was done playing defense. She had spent years building her farm, navigating the ridiculous bureaucracy of Oak Ridge Estate's Homeowners Association, and tolerating Diane Lockhart's power-hungry micromanagement. Not anymore. The morning sun caught the broken drone's metallic fragments, casting sharp reflections across her lawn. In that moment, Margaret Holloway made a decision that would transform a quiet suburban conflict into an all-out war. A war fought with surveillance, legal maneuvers, and an absolutely ruthless commitment to proving that some rules were meant to be challenged. Diane Lockhart had no idea what was coming. Diane Lockhart's perfectly manicured fingers hovered over her keyboard, a half-empty Starbucks Vendilac cooling beside her pristine white MacBook. The HOA complaint system was her personal playground, and today's target was about to receive a masterpiece of bureaucratic harassment. Margaret Holloway's farm had been a thorn in her side for years. Too much space, too much independence, too much everything that didn't conform to Oak Ridge Estate's vision of suburban perfection. The drone program was her latest innovation, a technological solution to monitor those who thought they were above the rules. But something was different this time. Her most advanced surveillance drone, $12,000 custom-built model with thermal imaging, high-resolution cameras, and GPS tracking, had gone offline. Not just offline, destroyed. The repair company's report was frustratingly vague. Catastrophic system failure, they'd said. Unusual external interference. Diane knew better. She pulled up Margaret's file, a thick digital dossier compiled over years of meticulous observation. Chicken coop dimensions, fence height, grass length, exterior paint shade. Every potential violation carefully documented, just waiting for the right moment to strike. The intercom buzzed. Her husband, Robert, called from the kitchen. "Honey, did you want me to reschedule the landscaping team?" "Not now," she snapped, her eyes never leaving the screen. Something was wrong. Margaret had always been careful, too careful. Her property was infuriatingly close to perfect, which made finding violations maddeningly difficult. The drones were supposed to change that. High-resolution images, thermal scans, minute-by-minute monitoring. And now this. Diane opened her most powerful weapon, the HOA violation template. Customized. Ruthless. A document that could make even the most composed homeowner break into a cold sweat. She began typing, her acrylic nails clicking against the keyboard with military precision. Violation notice, property at 1247 Oak Ridge Rural Route, suspected infractions, unauthorized agricultural equipment, potential zoning noncompliance, excessive livestock density, unregistered outbuildings. Her finger hovered over the send button. Something felt different. The usual rush of satisfaction was missing. For the first time in her decade-long reign as HOA president, Diane felt a twinge of something unexpected. Not fear, exactly. More like a sense that the game had changed. Outside her immaculate home office, the perfectly trimmed hedges and identical mailboxes of Oak Ridge Estates stood as a testament to her control. Every lawn, every fence, every single exterior detail carefully monitored and managed. But Margaret Holloway's farm remained the one landscape that refused to be completely tamed. Diane took a long sip of her now-cold latte, her mind racing. The drones were just the beginning. If Margaret thought this was a simple territorial dispute, she was about to learn the true meaning of bureaucratic warfare. The printer hummed to life, spitting out multiple copies in the violation notice. First salvo fired. The Oak Ridge Estates Community Center looked like a war room disguised as a suburban meeting space. Fluorescent lights flickered over rows of uncomfortable chairs, each one filled with a homeowner nursing a grudge or a grievance. Margaret Holloway sat in the back, her weathered work boots a stark contrast to the pristine loafers and designer heels surrounding her. Diane Lockhart stood at the podium, her power suit pressed within an inch of its life, reading from a thick binder of regulations with the passion of a televangelist preaching salvation through homeowner compliance. Section 7, paragraph 3.2 clearly states that all exterior modifications must be pre-approved by the Architectural Review Committee, Diane declared, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. This includes, but is not limited to, chicken coops, garden structures, and— Margaret's hand shot up. The room went silent. Is there something you'd like to add, Ms. Holloway? Diane's smile was razor-thin, a predator sensing potential prey. Actually, yes, Margaret responded, her voice calm and deliberate. I'd like to discuss the recent drone surveillance of my property. A collective intake of breath swept through the room. Everyone knew about the drones. Nobody had dared to mention them openly. Diane's perfectly maintained composure flickered for just a moment, a micro-expression of surprise that most would have missed. But Margaret caught it. Years of reading livestock and handling temperamental farm equipment had given her an uncanny ability to spot the smallest signs of weakness. Drone surveillance? Diane repeated, her voice carefully modulated. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Margaret pulled a manila envelope from her bag. Inside were photographs, high-resolution images captured from the ground showing the drone fragments, GPS coordinates, timestamp data, evidence collected with the same meticulous care she applied to her farm. 3 drones, Margaret said, crashed on my property, illegally surveilling private land. The room held its collective breath. HOA meetings were typically battlegrounds of petty complaints and passive-aggressive posturing. But this was different. Diane's hand gripped the podium's edge, her manicured nails, a soft blush pink this month, pressed into the wood. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Is there? Margaret interrupted, a dangerous move in the rigid hierarchy of HOA politics. The other homeowners shifted uncomfortably. Some looked fascinated. Others looked like they wanted to sink into their chairs and disappear. Margaret knew she had one shot, one moment to change the dynamic that had controlled this neighborhood for years, one opportunity to challenge a system built on micromanagement and silent intimidation. I have documentation, she said simply, and I'm prepared to take this further if necessary. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. In the fluorescent-lit battlefield of suburban governance, a line had just been drawn in the sand. The aftermath of the HOA meeting spread through Oak Ridge Estates like wildfire. Whispers behind perfectly trimmed hedges, hushed conversations over morning coffee, sideways glances at neighborhood gatherings. Margaret Holloway had done the unthinkable. She challenged Diane Lockhart publicly, and worse, she'd done it with evidence. Robert Lockhart discovered the first warning sign 3 days after the meeting. He was washing his Mercedes, a ritual more sacred than Sunday church service, when he noticed something odd about the carefully maintained lawn. A patch near the sprinkler system looked different, slightly discolored, almost imperceptible to anyone who wasn't obsessed with lawn perfection. He knelt down, running his manicured fingers through the grass. Something was wrong. Meanwhile, Diane was mounting her counteroffensive. She'd spent years building a network of influence in Oak Ridge Estates. Homeowners who owed her favors. Board members she helped climb the social ladder. This was more than a simple dispute. This was a threat to her entire system of control. Her first move came through official channels. A certified letter arrived at Margaret's farm stamped with official HOA letterhead. Violation notices. Detailed. Precise. Each one crafted to create maximum administrative headache. But Margaret was no ordinary opponent. She'd grown up on farms, dealt with agricultural bureaucracy, fought legal battles over water rights and land use. These HOA tactics were child's play compared to the fights she'd survived. The letter claimed multiple infractions: unauthorized farm equipment storage, potential zoning violations, excess livestock beyond permitted density, unapproved exterior modifications. Margaret read each page carefully, a slight smile playing at the corner of her mouth. Every single claim was meticulously documented. She had files, permits, surveys, years of careful preparation. This wasn't just a battle. This was war. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Ms. Holloway. The voice was professional. Measured. This is Daniel Rodriguez from the County Zoning Board. Margaret's grip tightened on the phone. She knew how these calls typically went. Bureaucratic threats, veiled warnings. I understand you've had some issues with the local HOA, Rodriguez continued. We've received some interesting documentation about surveillance practices that might be, shall we say, outside standard legal boundaries. The game had just changed. In Oak Ridge Estates, a quiet revolution was brewing. One drone, one letter, one phone call at a time. The perfectly manicured facade of suburban conformity was about to crack wide open. And Diane Lockhart had no idea what was coming next. Technology has a way of revealing secrets, and in Oak Ridge Estates, secrets were about to become very, very public. Margaret's tech-savvy nephew Jake arrived with an arsenal of equipment that looked more like it belonged in his cybersecurity lab than on a farm. Spectrum analyzers, signal interceptors, forensic data recovery tools that made that HOA's drone technology look like a child's toy. These are the drone fragments, Jake asked, spreading the broken pieces across Margaret's kitchen table. His fingers moved with surgical precision, connecting components, extracting memory chips, revealing digital breadcrumbs. What they found was more than just surveillance evidence. It was a digital map of manipulation. The drones weren't just random surveillance. They were part of a systematic approach. GPS coordinates, timestamp logs, detailed flight paths that revealed a disturbing pattern of targeted harassment. Someone had invested serious money and technology into monitoring Margaret's property. Aunt Maggie, Jake said, his voice dropping an octave, these aren't standard HOA surveillance drones. These are custom-built, military-grade technology repurposed for suburban warfare. Diane Lockhart's world was about to unravel, and she didn't even know it. The County Zoning Board investigator, Daniel Rodriguez, arrived unexpectedly. A tall man with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen every bureaucratic trick in the book. He carried a thick folder and a look of professional determination. Ms. Holloway, Rodriguez began, we've reviewed the documentation regarding unauthorized surveillance. The HOA may have significantly overstepped legal boundaries. Margaret knew this was about more than just her farm. This was about challenging a system of power that had gone unchecked for years. Suburban HOAs operated like mini-dictatorships, with presidents like Diane Lockhart ruling through intimidation and endless bureaucratic paperwork. Jake continued extracting data. Each recovered fragment told a story. Thermal imaging logs, high-resolution camera feeds, tracking algorithms designed to catch the most minute infractions. Look at this, Jake muttered, turning his laptop screen. They've been tracking not just property lines, but personal movements. This is beyond a violation of HOA rules. This is a potential privacy lawsuit. Rodriguez leaned in, his professional demeanor shifting to genuine interest. This could be grounds for a significant legal action. The pieces were coming together. What started as a simple drone incident was transforming into something much larger. A challenge to a system of suburban governance that had operated in the shadows for too long. Margaret looked out her farmhouse window. The perfectly manicured lawns of Oak Ridge Estates stretched before her. A landscape of conformity about to be disrupted. Let's make some noise, she said quietly. The first shot had been fired. And Diane Lockhart was about to learn that not all battles are won with rulebooks and drone surveillance. The Lockhart home had always been a fortress of suburban perfection. Granite countertops, imported Italian marble, custom window treatments that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. But perfection has its price and its vulnerabilities. Robert Lockhart discovered the first crack in their carefully constructed world during a Zoom call with his law firm. The lawn. Something was definitely wrong with the lawn. What had begun as a slight discoloration was now a full-blown problem. Patches of grass were dying in geometric patterns, not random, calculated, almost as if someone had conducted a precise botanical warfare campaign right beneath their perfectly manicured exterior. Diane was in her home office, fingers flying across her keyboard, when Robert burst in. Something's happening to our lawn, he said, his voice rising an octave higher than his usual calm demeanor. She didn't look up. Not now, Robert. I'm managing a crisis. But he persisted. The lawn was their pride, their statement. A living testament to their control and status in Oak Ridge Estates. Each blade of grass was a soldier in their war against suburban mediocrity. Across town, Margaret Holloway smiled. Jake had been busy. The data recovered from the drones wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon. And Margaret knew exactly how to use it. The county zoning board was preparing documentation. Lawyers were being consulted. The digital trail of Diane's surveillance campaign was about to become very, very public. But the lawn was her first act of beautiful, calculated revenge. A specialized biological agent, carefully engineered, designed to target specific grass types used in high-end suburban landscaping. Slow acting, precise, untraceable to anyone but an expert. Robert called a landscaping company, then another, then a third. Each expert looked more confused than the last. "I've never seen anything like this," one said, kneeling on the dying grass. "It's almost like the lawn is being systematically destroyed from the root system." Diane finally looked up from her computer. The HOA had always been her kingdom, a realm of perfectly aligned mailboxes, uniform paint colors, grass cut to exactly 2.5 inches, no deviation allowed, no individuality tolerated. But Margaret Holloway was about to show her that kingdoms can fall. The first official letter arrived that afternoon. County Zoning Board letterhead. Certified mail. The kind of envelope that makes even the most confident person's hands shake. Diane's manicured finger hovered over the envelope's seal. Something had changed. The rules of engagement were no longer what they used to be. This wasn't just about a farm. This wasn't just about drones. This was about power, control, the very fabric of their suburban world. And Margaret Holloway was coming to tear it all down, one blade of grass at a time.